What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Have, as always, a lot I want to get to. I'm going to try to fit in as much as possible. We're going to go over, of course, the news and notes and injury updates from Monday. We're going to go over a little bit of that Chiefs game, of course, with Packers-Chiefs coming up this upcoming weekend. And then, of course, a little trade deadline talk. And I want to also get to my grades from the defensive side of the ball from this past week against Arizona. So let's jump in right away. First of all, injury updates. Both Allen Lazard and MVS are back at practice. Obviously, huge news for Green Bay. Allen Lazard off the COVID list. MVS activated off of IR, opening up that availability as well. So really big news for the Packers offense, getting both of their wide receivers back. Dennis Kelly also returned, which was nice to see. Again, I think this is a offensive lineman that we haven't exactly got to see a ton of. That's usually a good thing if you don't have to see your offensive lineman, but with the injuries, we saw Yosh Nijman. We've seen a variety of different combinations, but overall, just on the offensive line, you want that depth. So great to see Dennis Kelly returned. On the flip side, no sign of Davante Adams, which not totally unexpected, still hasn't passed COVID protocols. So he, of course, still not present at Packers practice. And then two interesting ones, Marcedes Lewis and Kurt Benkert, both not at practice. Is that a COVID issue? Is that a illness issue? Is that a Kurt Benkert was claimed by another team issue? Like, what exactly does that mean? We will find out. There was no update from Matt LaFleur in his press conference for either Marcedes Lewis or Kurt Benkert. So just something that we're going to have to kind of keep an eye on this upcoming week to see if there's anything, up there. But no sign of Davante Adams, Marcedes Lewis, or Kurt Benkert at practice. Also, Kingsley Keke did not practice. Za'Darius Smith was at practice, but of course not practicing, still recovering from back surgery. And then Kylin Hill and Robert Tonyan were officially placed on IR as well. So plenty of Packers news and notes and injury updates. Great to see the receivers back. Great to see Dennis Kelly back. Davante Adams, not surprising. Kylin Hill and Robert Tonyan, not surprising. And then we'll see what's up with Marcedes Lewis as well as Kurt Benkert kind of moving forward. But lots going on. The other big thing that happened that was very news and noteworthy this past day was Von Miller. Von Miller traded from the Broncos to the Rams. Now, Von Miller's almost 33 years of age. He's not the same guy he once was, but still very, very talented. And of course, as a Packer fan, you hate seeing him go to a team that's already one of the more talented and, imposing teams that there is in the NFC. I mean, it wouldn't be surprising to anyone if it ended up being Packers-Rams in an NFC championship game or in a divisional round or whatever. And yeah, you don't exactly want to see another player the caliber of Von Miller on that defense. They've already got Aaron Donald. They've already got Jalen Ramsey, and now they're adding Von Miller. That's daunting. That is a massively talented defense, and that's something that at some point, well, of course, in the regular season, coming up here in not too long, Green Bay will face the Rams in the regular season, but come playoff time could easily be a matchup that we see as well. So this is definitely worth keeping an eye on. Now, a couple things here. It may not seem like it, and I know that there's always a little bit of confusion for how teams use draft picks, but a second and third round pick for a rental almost 33-year-old edge rusher is an overpay. And you might say, like, Andy, like, they don't care about a second or third round pick. Like, they get Von Miller. Yes, they do. But top 100 picks are valued immensely by NFL general managers. And you could argue, and maybe you wouldn't be wrong, that they overvalue those picks. Maybe. But top 100 picks are how you really build the core of your team. And giving up two of those, a second rounder and a third rounder, for a player that you're basically going to get for maybe 12 games at most, the remainder of this regular season, and then a couple playoff games, maybe a Super Bowl. And if they get there, right, and if they win it, they won't care having to pay a second and third round pick. But that's a lot to invest in one shot at this season. They're already traded, of course, a ton of picks away for Matthew Stafford. They've made other deals, so they don't exactly have a ton of draft capital moving forward. Now, if they pay that off with a Super Bowl win, nobody's going to care, right? But the risk reward is real here, where you're acquiring a half season rental who has had injury issues, who's almost 33 years of age, for two premium picks. Now, the reason that they overpaid. And the reason that Denver was able to get a second and a third rounder from the Rams is because Denver decided to pay almost all of Von Miller's contract. So in essence, not only are they getting Von Miller, but they're getting him at a vet minimum deal. For the Broncos, if he left in free agency, if Von Miller leaves in free agency, the most he could get at his age is a 5th round comp pick. That's the most that the Broncos could get as a comp pick because of his experience in the league is a 5th round pick. Once you reach a certain age and years of experience, I think it's years of experience, you can only get a 5th round pick. That's the best you can do. So if he walks in free agency, you only get a 5th round pick. They did not feel great about him re-signing in Denver, or that would be the best direction for the franchise. And now you get a 2nd and 3rd round pick back in return. You can't turn that down if you're Denver. So it makes sense for Denver. And I can understand it for the Rams. This is an all-in sort of season for them. They are now able to put Von Miller, Aaron Donald, and Jalen Ramsey all on the field at the same time. And this is a scary defense for opponents to go against. And oh, by the way, their offense isn't exactly too shabby either. Matthew Stafford's been really good for them. Cooper Kupp's been one of the best wide receivers in all of football. It wouldn't shock me if they trade for a running back as well and just kind of shore up that position. But the Rams are clearly all in, and that's definitely going to make things more challenging for the Packers. Now, of course, there are those who are saying, well, why aren't the Packers doing a deal like this? The Rams or some other team is already always doing this all-in deal. Why not the Packers? The Packers have done everything that they possibly can to go all in on this season. There's not much left that they can still do. Now, they could trade a second, like they could do something similar, right? They could trade a 2nd and 3rd round pick for a player that a team is willing to take on the full salary. That's something that the Packers could do. They could buoy this current team with doing something like that. That 100% they could. But I also just want to say, they have borrowed so much money from the future already that there's nowhere left to turn. Devontae Adams and restructuring his deal and signing him to a long-term extension is about the only thing left they have to still open up money. They have a little bit left this upcoming season. As I said, they could give up premium draft picks to go out, or maybe a Jordan Love, I guess. They could give up something premium that's cheap for a team willing to take on the salary and trade away a player like a Von Miller, and the Packers get him cheap. That's within the realm of possibility, but there are a few teams that have the high-end talent that Green Bay has. You're looking at, if everyone's healthy, Aaron Rodgers, a top quarterback, Aaron Jones, a top running back, Devontae Adams, the top wide receiver, David Bakhtiari, the top tackle, arguably, Elton Jenkins, a top guard, if not the top guard. He's right in that conversation, right? Zadarius Smith and Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith, Whitney Merciless would be easily one of the best edge rusher groups in the NFL. Kenny Clark, one of the better defensive tackles in the NFL. Devondre Campbell is playing as one of the best linebackers in the NFL. Jair Alexander, arguably the best corner in the NFL. And then you're still Adrian Amos and so on and so forth. There is so much talent on this team, and they have borrowed so much from the future. They have gone all in. Just because re-signing guys like Preston Smith, or bringing guys back like Preston Smith and Aaron Jones are your own guys, doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't gone all in. It's just that they decided to keep their own guys. Kenny Clark, Aaron Jones, Preston Smith, Kevin King, and we can certainly argue of whether or not that was the right use of those resources. We can certainly argue it probably wasn't, but they decided to keep their own and keep the team together this way. That's their version of going all in. You can argue that there's other things they could have done, absolutely, but they have absolutely gone all in. So yes, the Rams are making a bigger splash because they traded draft picks away and got somebody from another team, but don't confuse it with the fact that Green Bay has signed, cheap free agents that have turned out, Rasul Douglas, and traded for Corey Bojorquez and signed Devondre Campbell. They have added pieces to this team. Jalen Smith, we'll see what happens. And they may not stop either. So Green Bay is all in on this season. Just because the Rams did something that looks splashy on the outside doesn't mean that Green Bay hasn't already made those type of moves to keep this team together. And oh, by the way, the Packers, even with all those injuries, still on top of the NFC and the NFL from a record standpoint. Let's talk very quickly about the trade deadline, because There was a quote from Matt LaFleur. He said, if the right opportunity presents itself, that's something that we could be involved with. Speaking of the, trades at the deadline, he said, I know Goody and his staff are working extremely hard at trying to find something. Now that sounds like something, right? When I heard this live, when I, listening to the press conference, this very much echoed to me as, we're going to be in on every conversation and we're going to make all these phone calls and do our due diligence. Something may work out, something not, but we're going to try to do everything we can to upgrade this team. And that's a classic Brian Gutekunst. Like, they're going to consistently be in every conversation and constantly try and find ways to see if they can upgrade the team. That's what I took it as. Now, he said, I know Goody and his staff are working extremely hard at trying to find something. That is a little bit of a telling quote that they're after something here, right? They are, and especially after Robert Tonyan goes down and the injuries that they have. They don't know if Z will come back 100%. Bakhtiari's coming off a torn ACL. Jair Alexander may or may not play at full strength the remainder of the season. So there are still ways that the Packers can upgrade this team. And yeah, if something makes sense, I'm sure they will do something. I think that's going to make it a very intriguing trade deadline to see if anything happens. But I would still say that, to me, this echoes more as we're going to call around, do everything we can to try to upgrade the team, but something may or may not happen. And we'll see what exactly that means when the deadline's over and if Green Bay actually acquires someone. All right, so we had Chiefs-Giants on Monday Night Football, and every time I watch the Chiefs, I'm sure this is similar for a lot of you, I'm just waiting for them to break out. And every time I watch them, I'm like, man, the Chiefs look awful and they look very beatable and it feels like anyone could beat them. And then, they either come away with a loss or a bad win. And then the next week comes and I expect the Chiefs to win big and have this huge outcome. And then I watch them and I'm like, man, this Chiefs team looks bad and feels like they could lose to anyone and seems very beatable. Then the next week comes and I'm like, the Chiefs will win by like 20 against the Giants or more. And then they look awful against the Giants, come out with a bad win, if you will. And yeah, they just haven't looked like themselves all year long. The Chiefs defense is not good. I know they held the Giants mostly in check this game, but the Chiefs defense is not good. I'm not impressed overall by them. Chris Jones had some big plays at the end of this game. We know Honey Badger can make some big plays, but overall, Chiefs defense is bad. And this offense has not figured out a way to, kind of take the easy stuff and make, really allow the running game to beat the defenses that are playing so many players off and so many guys in coverage. Until they do that, it's going to make things very hard on Patrick Mahomes. I thought Kansas City did a good job of trying to open things up underneath for Hardman and Tyreek Hill, just getting the ball out quick and letting them do some of the heavy lifting. I think that's something that Green Bay is going to have to be prepared for. But KC looks bad. And frankly, I still think Green Bay going into KC, that's still such a scary game, right? You still see Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and so on and so forth, and you still are nervous of that sort of team, but you watch them and Green Bay is the better team right now. There's no question about that Green Bay's playing a much better brand of football. Does that mean Green Bay goes into KC and wins? No, it's going to be a tough game, and KC's going to want to really get back on track every single week until they do. So I think it's going to be a really tough game, a really interesting challenge, and we finally get Mahomes versus Rodgers, which should be phenomenal. But yeah, they look bad, and right now Green Bay's the better team, and we'll see just how well they're able to do in that game, but it should be a very, very, very fun matchup. All right, before I get out of here, my top three defenders this past week against Arizona. No surprise at number one, Rasul Douglas. He did struggle a little bit in the second half, gave up a couple completions. He did. I mentioned earlier in this week, I thought there was maybe a phantom or a questionable pass interference. It was definitely legit. He chucked the guy well past the 5 yards, and it looked like the ball was in the air. So legitimate PI. There were a couple plays I'm sure he would have loved to have back, but there's one play early in the game where it's a bubble screen to the outside. And it's basically two blockers in Douglas, and then, or maybe it was just one blocker in Douglas. I forget what it was, but like the next Packer is far away from coming. Douglas gets through the blocker and then like gets the screen at the ankles and finds a way to get him down. It was a really, really impressive play that he made that I just don't think very many corners make that play. He's still been aggressive tackling. Of course, had the massive interception to seal the game. Just been a breath of fresh air at corner and certainly deserving of number one on my list this week. Whitney Mercilus was number two. I mean, how crazy is this, right? Whitney Mercilus and Rasul Douglas just here recently, my top two graded defenders. If I would have told you a month ago that the Packers' two highest graded defenders in a win against undefeated Arizona on the road were Rasul Douglas and Whitney Mercilus, you would have thought I was absolutely insane. Like, obviously, they weren't even on the team. Rasul Douglas was a practice squad player in Arizona. Whitney Mercilus was in Houston. And yeah, what are the odds that those are the top two? And if I would have told you that, you would probably be like, well, Green Bay lost the game. But no, Mercilus and Douglas were fantastic. And just kudos to Brian Gutekunst and his staff for finding those two players, because they were fantastic in this game and were a huge reason why Green Bay was able to win in Arizona. And then number 3 was Kenny Clark. Not a vintage Kenny Clark game. I didn't think he made that much of an impact, but I'm going to get to a couple guys. Like Rashawn Gary was on my bottom 3 this week. Defensive front against Kyler Murray are just like, they hate having to face a Kyler Murray or a Lamar Jackson because they have to be so much more disciplined. Like as a pass rusher, you just want to go hunt, right? You just want to get up the field and go make a play, but you have to be so disciplined in your passing lanes, and you know they could take off running at any point, and it just is a really frustrating game. You could see that a little bit from Clark and Gary and so on and so forth, but I thought Clark still had a nice game. Bottom 3 players, Chris Barnes was my lowest graded player. I thought he struggled both against the run, against the pass. Really, really rough couple weeks. Thank goodness for Devondre Campbell, because he's been everything they've needed him to be. And without that, Jalen Smith didn't look the part in his couple weeks trying to play. Oren Burks has been up and down. Chris Barnes has been up and down. So they definitely need Campbell, but they need Chris Barnes to play better, because we've seen a lot of games where he's played a lot better over the course of the last season and a half. Eric Stokes was my second lowest graded player. The DeAndre Hopkins catches a little bit of a hang with him. Now, ultimately, at the end of the day, if there's a ball in the air and you don't get your head turned and locate the ball and make a play on it, can't make a tackle and give up a huge touchdown, that's on you. You've got to figure out a way to play the ball a little bit better. But against DeAndre Hopkins, one-on-one, no safety back, that is a lot easier said than done. And I think, honestly, so I think what happened is Hopkins is going down the sideline. He looks back to locate the ball and sort of throttles down. Now, as a corner, especially if you haven't had a chance to get your head around and locate the ball, what you're doing is you're playing the receiver, right? So you see Hopkins throttle down, you're throttling down to make a play if he all of a sudden puts his hands up or something, like, whatever you need to do in that situation. So he's waiting for his hands to go up. He's throttling down to make sure that he doesn't overrun the receiver, and Hopkins comes back to the ball, which we know he can be very good at. And it looks like Hopkins looks back to locate it and then realize either one of two things. Either he realizes, oh, I need to accelerate to go get that ball because it's going past me, or he completely set up Stokes. Now, for Stokes, you're not expecting a double move at that point in the route, well past, down a field where you would ever see a double move. You're not expecting anything like that. So you see him throttle down and you're thinking, all right, I'm going to get ready to start playing the ball if need be. You're certainly not thinking like all of a sudden he's going to speed up, accelerate at the insane pace that Hopkins is able to, accelerate through the catch and all of a sudden run for a touchdown. So that's exactly what happened. Now, maybe he set Stokes up. I wouldn't put it past Hopkins because he's that good, but it looked like he looks back, realizes the ball's going past him, accelerates, and as Hopkins slows down, Stokes kind of slows down with him. And then the last thing you're expecting is you're just kind of getting ready to play the ball, play the hands, maybe look back and locate the football. All of a sudden, Hopkins bursts, and then now it's all over because you had just throttled down as the corner. So I think it's a little bit unlucky. I didn't think he had terrible coverage up until that point, but Murray threw a jump ball sort of situation, just kind of threw one up, and Hopkins went and located it, got the ball. But at the end of the day, if you don't locate it and don't play it, it's still on you as a corner. Nobody said playing corner in the NFL against DeAndre Hopkins was going to be easy, but this is one of those moments where I guess a teachable moment, but it's definitely a tough one. Overall, the rest of the game, I thought Stokes played well. And then, like I said, Rashawn Gary was my third lowest graded player. Not an egregious game in any way, shape, or form. There were a couple of really nice plays. I thought he started the game well. And then I don't know if he just got impatient, but he started rushing up the field a little bit, lost some contain, would get kind of past Kyler Murray, which opens up some of those lanes, over pursued a couple times. So just those sort of things that I think will be a learning in. Again, I kind of expected this coming in. This is a nightmare game for Gary because he loves playing fast and physical and intense. And in this game, like I said, you almost have to throttle down as an edge rusher and a defensive lineman and just kind of see what's happening first so that you're not giving lanes to Kyler Murray. You can see Gary had a little bit more patience in the first half. It kind of waned in the second half. And as Arizona was making their run, you didn't really see or hear much from Rashawn Gary. That's when some of those negative grades came into play. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be right back here tomorrow, so make sure not to miss it and subscribe if you haven't already. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.